Well, everyone, welcome to the October board meeting of the Environmental Facilities Corporation. Mr. Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Commissioner Sagos,
Present.
Mr. Sokol,
Present.
Mr. Corcoran,
Present.
Ms. DeMarquis,
Present.
Mr. Krasansky,
Here.
Mr. Zarofsky,
I'm here as well.
and as we stated, Mr. Leary is absent, but we do have a quorum. Mr. Chair, you can proceed.
Okay, great. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the draft minutes of the September 2nd, 2021 board meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Motion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The draft minutes are approved. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the draft minutes from the September 15th, 2021 special board meeting. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion for approval of those minutes, Chairman.
Thank you. Vita, second.
I can second that. Here.
Okay, couple of seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The third item, I guess these are being numbered, the fourth item, is a report of the chair. In the introduction of Maureen Coleman. I'll just read a quick bio on Maureen. Maureen Coleman was appointed general counsel of EFC in May of 2015, served as acting president and CEO of EFC from September 10th, 2019 to January 13th, 2021, and was named senior vice president and general counsel in February 2021. She was appointed as executive director of the New York State Bridge Authority on July 15th, 2021. Prior to joining EFC, she served as assistant counsel of the governor, where I had a chance to work with her directly on environment and energy policy. She also advised the governor on policy and staff matters and legal matters related to the environment, energy, and agriculture portfolio. Prior to this role, she was employed for 13 years with the DEC, where she served as legislative counsel in the department's Office of Legislative Affairs, and then as bureau chief of water and natural resources for the department's Office of General Counsel. Prior to joining state service, Ms. Coleman served as vice president, law and regulation at J&W Seligman & Co. Incorporated, a privately owned investment manager in New York City. She has a BA from College of St. Rose, a JD from Brooklyn Law School. Welcome back to the family, Maureen. It's good to have you back. Certainly have had a chance to work with you for many years in your capacity in the governor's office, where we were side by side on many budgets, and certainly as you've been at EFC. We have not interacted with the Bridge Authority, but that's fine. I know you've done a great job there in your short time there, but welcome back to EFC.
Can I speak? No, I just want to say I'm so excited to be back. We've got a lot of exciting things coming in front of us, and I would be remiss if I didn't say how privileged I was to work the last 3 months at the Bridge Authority. They're a great group of great group of folks, and the bridges that they manage over the Hudson River are beautiful and very well maintained by the Bridge Authority. So it's been a great experience, but I am very excited to be back here and full steam ahead.
Excellent. Great. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Molly Larkin and the entire executive team who've done a fantastic job, not just over the last few months, but really this year, a tumultuous year, an important year on environmental investment. You all have done a great job. We got some great announcements out the last month or so. I'm really grateful for all your service to the state, so thank you.
Welcome back, Maureen.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have a few items here before we get to the resolutions. Is there a president's report this month?
There is not.
Okay. Any committee reports?
There are not.
And is there any unfinished business?
There is not.
Okay. Okay, let's move along to the resolutions. Mr. Secretary, you may proceed with resolution number 1.
Certainly. ID number 1. It is my honor to say this one. A resolution of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation appointing a president and chief executive officer of the corporation.
Excellent. May I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Honored to second.
Thank you. Thank you both. Any questions or discussion?
I think you summed it all up in your introduction, so I second that.
Great. Thank you, Vita. Anyone else? Okay.
In hearing Maureen's background reread, we're very privileged to be able to have her back at AFC at the helm. And so today is a glorious day. Welcome back, Maureen.
Thank you, Francis. Okay, great. All in favor of adopting resolution number 1?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. For the record, a unanimous vote, and congratulations, Maureen. Welcome back. Okay, Mr. Secretary, you may proceed with resolution number 2.
Resolution ID number 2, a resolution of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation authorizing and approving the annual information statement of the corporation.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
The motion. I can make that motion. I'll second.
Okay, any questions or discussion? George, I know you want to present on this.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. We're in this resolution, we're seeking board authorization and approval for use of the annual information statement. The AIS is a significant part of EFC's form of disclosure in connection with the offer and sale of the corporation's bonds. The AIS includes detailed information about the corporation, our programs, and the security structure and the terms of our bonds. Once approved and finalized, we will file the AIS with the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board and its electronic access system known as EMMA. The public is always able to access our disclosure through EMMA and through EFC's public website. As material events warrant, we may update the information through amendments to the AIS, which haven't been required in recent years. This year, the AIS will be dated October 15, and the changes to the AIS include minor revisions and updates to personnel and financial information, as well as updated COVID-19 disclosure. Most of the substantive changes will be to the financial data, which are provided by our finance and operations staff. This year's AIS will need to be finalized prior to the posting of the preliminary official statement for the pool, which will be done in the first week of November. Thank you.
George, thank you. Questions for George?
Well, only this, George. I just noticed obviously the changes on the first page, all the personnel. I assume you were waiting for today's official announcement to make all those red line changes?
Yes, we were.
Yeah. And including on the board side too, because it looks like one at least may, I don't know what the status is of Dr. Zucker, but I assume you're going to update all those things before this.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
And the only other maybe observational editorial comment is it looks like on page 15, the MFI program overview diagram, some of the boxes, there might be some formatting issues. I'm not quite sure if it's just the version that we have here, but someone should probably double check that.
I think it's because of the red line. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, it looks like the box is like, no. Here's the, it looks like no.
That wasn't the
I was
intent.
gonna comment on how helpful actually this document is. It's a great resource document for many to reference, and I enjoy going through it again all the time, just getting different insights, and the flow diagrams are very helpful as well.
No, agreed, especially for those who are trying to learn about more
Yeah.
details about the business. So thank you.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Is there any other notable changes? I don't see a whole lot of language changes. You know, a lot of times you're just cleaning them and updating them. I don't see anything that's of material change.
There's no real material changes. The exhibits which we didn't include will be updated by our finance and operations staff prior to publication. But other than that, there were no material changes.
Yeah, I didn't see anything.
Any further questions or discussions on this point? Okay, thank you all. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
All in favor of adopting resolution ID number 1?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the resolution is approved. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, you may proceed with resolution ID number 3.
ID number 3, a resolution of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation amending the prior authorization for financial assistance to be provided by the corporation to certain recipients in connection with the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund.
May I have a motion and a second, please?
I can make that motion.
Thank you. Second?
I can provide a second. Couldn't get to my mute button quick enough.
All right, thank you. Audra, please take it away.
Okay, this resolution is for a drinking water project in the city of Middletown, located in Orange County. As you see there on the map, they are working on new storage and upgrading their storage. Total project cost of $5.3 million. We originally closed this one in August of 2019. It has a market rate financing piece and a WIA grant that was awarded to them, $2.965 million. As they've started to work and we've started to disperse on some preliminary engineering costs, they realized that they really needed to redesign the project a little bit. So we're coming back to you with a scope change. Those changes are detailed in the fact sheet, quite detailed. That was included with your board materials. So the details of what's changing is there. They did confirm for us that with this new scope, the project costs are unchanged. They have eliminated certain things which have mitigated the cost of adding other things. So that is Middletown.
Any questions for Audra? Okay, all in favor of adopting resolution ID number 3?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Audra.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, you may proceed with resolution ID number 4.
ID number 4, a resolution of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation authorizing financial assistance payments to selected municipalities to fund eligible intermunicipal water infrastructure projects from funds appropriated for the Clean Water Infrastructure Act of 2017.
Thank you, Thomas. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Vita. Always reliable. David, take it away.
Okay, good morning, everyone. The project we have today is for the Massapequa Water District in Nassau County. They are seeking an intermunicipal grant of just over $4 million. This project consists of upgrading and replacing water mains that are aged and failing, some of which are asbestos cement pipe. And this is a joint project between the Massapequa Water District, the Bethpage Water District, and the South Farmingdale Water District. That's it for this ID.
Thank you, David. Any questions or discussion on this?
Yeah, I'm just interested in knowing how it came about. It looks really like a total plus. These are great projects. Interested in who initiated this.
I don't know all the background on it. I know the Massapequa Water District is the lead entity on it.
Charlie, is your question like how to replicate or how to get others to do similar things? Is that?
Yeah, so right. So there's money just to do this intermunicipal. They're pretty rare, but boy, does it make sense, And so I love knowing, how it started. If it was EFC, if it was DEC, I'm sorry, DOH in this case. If it was, one of the communities, just good to know, how it, how it happened, so that we can have more of these things. They just when it happens, it always makes sense. It's much more efficient usually.
Roger, do you have background on this at all?
I don't specifically, but we can go back and see if we can dig a little deeper and find out who actually initiated this. And I agree. I mean, it's always great when water districts do sort of collaborate and cooperate. And I think this is, as Charlie said, a great example. And anything that we could do to sort of facilitate that in the future, I think is always a good thing. So we'll ask program to go back and see if we can get a little bit more details here.
That would be great. I mean, just to echo Charlie's point, right? If there's a way for EFC to drive that or get people to think that way, probably helpful, right? As a way to,
I think additionally of note, in the current WIA round that has recently been announced by the governor in Climate Week since the last meeting, IMG is included in that, and the grant threshold criteria has increased as part of that to try and incentivize intermunicipal agreements. So I think that's very positive for this round of WIA and IMG grants, of which the applications are due in November. So acknowledged and couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I'll just appreciate it, the discussion, and for these communities to know that this is a positive. We know the hurdles, we know the inertia, we know the turf and the control, get in the way of breaking out of that mold of just we'll do it ourselves. This is our business, our property. But so more money toward it, and more attention being paid to it. I think it's just a win-win. So thanks for making this happen. Appreciate it.
And I can just speak to 5 years of collaboration with the water districts in this area: Bethpage, South Farmingdale, and Massapequa more on the contamination side. The DEC side, there's a plume of VOCs in the area, a large plume of VOCs, Bethpage plume. And we have been encouraging, by virtue of our work on this, we've been encouraging these water districts to partner on some solutions. So some of what you're seeing here might be related to that partnership. It came together because of the contamination.
Oh, that's good to know. There could be lessons learned as to how they got together and how they chose, Bethpage to be the lead agency for the declaration, for the seeker, and how, what lessons learned on the success of that. And then what I didn't see in here, and you don't have to answer now, but I always like to see how much pipe is being replaced. That's just the engineering nerdy part of me.
We'll make that note, Vita, and try to make sure we get that information in the fact sheets.
Yeah, I just find it interesting to see how much we are replacing those old pipes over time.
Great. David, thank you. Any further questions for David or anybody else? Okay, all in favor of adopting resolution ID number 4?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's approved. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, please proceed with resolution ID number 5.
ID number 5, a resolution of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation making certain determinations and authorizing certain actions in connection with the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and authorizing financial assistance payments to certain municipalities to fund eligible drinking water projects from funds appropriated for the New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement Act.
Thank you, Thomas. May I have a motion and a second?
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Roger.
I'll second.
Great. David, over to you.
Okay, so the first project we have is for the village of Canisteo, which is in Steuben County, seeking a short-term market rate financing, just over 1.77 million, and a WIA grant of 3 million. So this project will rehabilitate an existing 1 million gallon water storage tank and will replace approximately 16,000 linear feet of aged and undersized water main. So this water system was originally installed in the 1930s, and since then hasn't had any significant improvements made. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of very undersized, leaking, deteriorated water mains throughout the system. So this project will improve the pressure, flow, water quality, and fire flow, and also reduce breaks and leakage. Next project. So the next one is for the city of Jamestown in Chautauqua County. Now this project is seeking a WIA grant of $3 million. So this project is for improvements to water main in the Washington Street area. This project will replace approximately 19,000 linear feet of water main and appurtenances. This, again, the water main and the appurtenances here, they're all very aged, in some cases over 130 years old, also undersized, and the system experiences frequent breaks. And the valves and the hydrants are mostly non-functioning, so this will be a total replacement of the appurtenances in that area, which would be a great project for the city. Next, please. Next one is for the city of Kingston. They're seeking a short-term market refinancing of $600,000 and a WIA grant of $900,000. This project will provide upgrades to the SCADA system at various water system facilities throughout the city. It'll also replace some critical control valves throughout the water system. So the end result will be that the city will have the ability to monitor and control their water system facilities remotely. This will help them to enhance the reliability of the system as well as security. And the valve upgrades will also enhance resiliency and reliability for the operators to operate the distribution system by eliminating the deficiencies associated with the existing aged valves. And next one. So this is for the village of Walton in Delaware County, seeking short-term market rate financing of $800,000 and a WIA grant of $1.2 million. This project will replace approximately 4,000 linear feet of aged and undersized cast iron mains. The existing main is over 75 years old. The project will also upgrade 2 well houses. It'll replace 2 old wooden buildings with new, more permanent concrete structures, and 2 existing steel bolted water storage tanks that are severely corroded and beyond their useful life will be upgraded to bring them up to current standards. So this project will enhance security and resiliency, and will also improve pressures, flows, disinfection residuals, and fire flows throughout the system. Any questions on any of these projects?
Those are some great projects, David. Any questions for David? Okay. May I have all in favor of adopting resolution ID number 5?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, David. That passes.
5 or 6?
That's 5.
Okay, sorry.
Yep. Mr. Secretary, please proceed with resolution number 6.
ID number 6, a resolution of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation amending the prior authorizations for financial assistance to be provided by the corporation to certain recipients in connection with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second?
I can make that initial motion.
Thank you, Roger.
Second it.
Thanks. Audra, please take it away.
Okay, this has one project in this ID number for the Village of Suffern in Rockland County. This is one of a few projects we have going or have done with Suffern. And you saw this one recently, but it needs to come back around to add a little bit more funding. On the slide there, you'll see the current financing amounts that we are asking for approval for. It's subsidized, so there's an interest-free portion and a market rate portion, and then it also has a WIA grant. It is a clean water project. They're looking to do wastewater treatment plant upgrades. As I said, you saw this one recently, and we had closed on it. The community at the time really wanted to make sure they had cash flow in place to get going. But unfortunately, as they started to get going, the contracts that they were bidding at the time came in for high bids. So project costs have now gone to just under 12 million, up from 9 million. So we're coming back to add the additional funding so that they have everything they need available, hopefully, to get this one to completion. So that's Village of Suffern for ID number 6.
Thank you, Audra. Questions for Audra?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just quickly, on the slide, it says funding increase. Actually, it's the amount, the total amount, but the increase is much less than that.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
'cause I'm
So
looking at, it was originally 3.3. We're going to 4.8. So okay.
right. So it's roughly, I believe it's just over, we were up at 9 million and we're going to just under 12. So yes, it's not all of those amounts. Those are the amounts that will be in the financing. So they'll have access to the 4.8 in short-term interest-free, 4.8 in short-term market rate, and the 2.2 in WIA. Those will be the actual amounts, not the increase from the prior amounts.
And then the July 2019 and then the March, they just did they add additional scope, or they just, is that what caused the cost, or just that?
No, so at the time that we had closed to ensure that they would have the cash flow, my understanding is they had either just bidded or were in the process of bidding a contract, and that came in much higher than the original estimate that we had used in the budget to close it the first time, which, you know, I feel like is happening a lot. You know, you guys have seen.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask, which is, are
Yeah.
you seeing that? Do you think this is a function of, we're reading about supply chain, limitations and other things? Is this a function of that? Do we expect to see more of that? Is there a way to be, I don't know, thoughtful? I mean, I guess that was maybe Vita's question you were asking, but that was in my head while you were talking about this. Is that?
Yeah, I do think, number one, we're seeing this a lot. Number two, I do expect to be back before you, with more cost increases. I think it's a function of a few things. Yes, the supply chain. Yes, a lot of work going on in the water infrastructure sector, which is fantastic, but also, as communities get out there and bid, prices have gone up. One of the things that we have started to do sort of on our side is, there's kind of this push-pull between, communities need to have cash flow to get through that design and engineering phase. So some of them start without everything being fully bid, and we're using the best guess estimates at the time. But as they get through that, design and engineering phase, if that takes time, some projects, it can take a lengthy amount of time. So original estimates that may have been done on construction may have been low. So that is also a reason. We're trying to make sure that we are using the latest and greatest and very recent construction estimates to hopefully mitigate what we have to come back to you for, but I don't think we're gonna completely mitigate that just because of the nature of the projects and the timing that it is taking some of these projects to get out of design. So I do expect to continue to have some cost increases for you.
And if I could add two things, Audra, we're also making sure that there are appropriate contingencies carried in those estimates of the communities to make sure that they cover some of those contingencies at an appropriate time. Obviously, the closer to bid, the contingency gets less, but we want to make sure that their construction estimate and their overall project plan of financing includes something that's not older than 6 months, especially in the COVID world that we're living in, Adam, with the increases that you had just mentioned. We want to make sure that we don't have projects that have cost estimates that are a year and a half old when the market's changed. So several things that we're looking at on that front.
Yeah, I guess, and that's a great point. I guess just put another way, it sounds like you guys are pretty clear and pretty confident that what's driving this is those broader dynamics. There's nothing necessarily that went wrong in Suffern's analysis here, but that this has been caught up in a broader dynamic. And I think that would be that's its own issue that we all should, maybe I'd love your thoughts on it at a broader, different time, broader discussion. But I think from the perspective of a governance perspective, it's just important to make sure that you guys are confident you've kicked the tires, that there was nothing necessarily that Suffern missed here or did wrong that might cause an alarm in this, as opposed to the broader dynamics which are going to affect the business, across the board.
Yeah,
absolutely. And there is a trend where a lot of communities like to make sure that they have their bids in, because that's the true number that they think. So they may not necessarily want the most recent estimate. They wait for the bid. So sometimes the timing of that can get a little interesting.
I understand.
Yeah, I think it's structural issues at play here in the broader economy and timing issues. And depending on which way the community chooses to go, sometimes that timing issue can come into play.
Audra, before you go further, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, just to echo on, or just add one additional point. So to Molly's point, we're asking for estimates for when you list your project, that you come in for a grant award, no more than 6 months, and that when you give us your set of plans and specs that you're about to go out to bid on, that you also give us an updated cost estimate, because through design, there may be some changes, so that by the time that we go into a bid, it can't be surprise that, suddenly the costs were up higher when they realized that the cost may have been going up in the first place.
Thank you, Tim and Audra. And Molly, any other questions on this Suffern grant and loan?
Thank you for your explanations on timing and supply chain. Timing is also supply chain of people.
Yes.
It is. Okay, all in favor of adopting resolution ID number 6?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, please proceed with ID number 7.
ID number 7, a resolution of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation making certain determinations and authorizing certain actions in connection with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and authorizing financial assistance payments to certain municipalities to fund eligible clean water projects from funds appropriated for the New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement Act.
Thank you, Thomas. Tim, the Zoom is yours.
We need a first and second.
Oh, yes, a first and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Approved. Okay, moving ahead to Zoom time for Tim.
Can you hear me?
We do.
Fantastic. All right, thank you. So before the board this afternoon, 7 projects, 2 pursuing short-term financing, 4 long-term financing, and 1 that is going to be getting a Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grant only. I'll take you through them individually. Village of Addison is Steuben County. Project that's completed construction, $2,914,513 in long-term financing that had previously received not just a WIA, but also an engineering planning grant. back as far as 2012, when that was actually the very first year that the engineering planning grant program began. And you can see the progression of from planning grant to accepting a large project to then moving forward with your project, $5 million in that part of the state, fairly large project. It's a consolidation project. So that was a community that's in the Chesapeake Basin, had to do nitrogen and phosphorus removal to comply with those nutrient discharge limits. And instead of taking on a more important or a more expensive localized upgrade, they're actually diverting their wastewater now to the town of Irwin, who had available capacity. So it's a great regionalization story in order to meet those limits. And it also just goes to the benefits of the engineering planning grant program with the more detailed outline that we have to ask these communities as part of the planning process to not just consider the solution on site, but to think a little bigger for more regional solutions. Next project, City of Binghamton. So you're going to see this same project on here twice for both the City of Binghamton and the Village of Johnson City. City of Binghamton, that treatment plant is a joint treatment plant, severely impacted both in 2006 by large storms as well as Tropical Storm Lee. They had to do a full plant rebuild, over $300 million worth of costs. We've taken this project in chunks for financing. This particular long-term financing is for $2,740,000. That's Binghamton's share. This project is, again, it's the largest discharger in the Chesapeake Basin. They rebuilt the entire treatment plant since it was flooded when the Chemung River rose, and they're actually under operation right now, and I'm told they are meeting their limits. So this is a very large project, and we were able to give them a portion of their funding at a 0% interest cost, and that's what this financing is for, $2.74 million. Next project, Village of Boonville in Oneida County. They're doing work on both their interceptor and at their wastewater treatment plant. Project began with an engineering planning grant that was awarded in 2017, so they got a little quicker move on it. They're doing nitrogen upgrades as well as installing UV disinfection at the treatment plant, doing screenings, putting in a new aeration system for a sequencing batch reactor. They also had, they've had some high flow events alongside a creek, Mill Creek, that tore out some erosion and exposed portions of their wastewater interceptor. So they are replacing a portion of that interceptor as well as installing riprap to ensure that the erosion doesn't occur again on that portion. It is getting both a short-term interest-free financing for $5,122,500 and was awarded CWSRF grant in 2019 for $2,457,500. So total SRF contribution here is $7,580,000 on a $9.8 million, $9.83 million project, which is getting quite a bit of RD support as well. Next project. So Johnson City, we talked about City of Binghamton. This is the Johnson City portion of the same project, $2,260,000 long-term interest-free financing. This was a very, very expensive upgrade for this part of the state, but again, very important for the state to be able to meet those Chesapeake Bay limits. Next project. City of Lockport in Niagara County. They're getting both a short-term interest-free financing. We're pre-financing a WQIP grant that was awarded by DEC for $1 million. And they were also awarded a $531,250 Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grant in 2019. This is a very large treatment plant, 22 million gallons. They're under a DEC consent order, and they're installing UV disinfection for this. There's a statewide effort, as the board may have seen over time, where DEC has been putting in the requirements for disinfection at many upstate treatment plants to protect water quality and public health. Next project. Town of New Windsor in Orange County. This is a grant-only project, $392,188. They're doing sewer and manhole replacement on a $1.810 million project, 25% grant. And the last project in Essex County is town of Ticonderoga. Ticonderoga took on a very large project, $20 million. Their long-term interest-free financing that we're looking to give them is $9,275,936. It's hardship until it's interest-free. They had received a $2.87 million WIA grant in support. Several things. This treatment plant had combined sewer overflows. They're going into the Lachute River. The Lachute is what feeds out of Lake George and goes into the southern end of Lake Champlain. It's under a DEC consent order to abate those CSOs. They did a stream redirection, so stream daylighting. They took several streams that were going into their existing collection system into the treatment plant and redirected them to the Lachute River. They also did storm sanitary sewer separation, and then they had to make improvements at their treatment plant as well, and new secondary treatment tanks for high flow events, as well as installing UV disinfection, similar to what I mentioned in Lockport that's been happening around the state. Any questions?
I've got one. Let's talk just about the Johnson City Binghamton huge project. The last 15 years, it's been inundated twice. I'm just wondering what the process was at looking at it, deciding, again, either, is there ability to move this or obviously protect it? Just give us a sense of what, what is going to be changing at that site as far as protecting it from further, floods.
Sure. So, and I can give you some pictures as well, Charlie, and to the whole board if they're interested. When the 2006 flood hit, they hadn't yet gotten to building a new flood wall at the plant. They had gotten approved by FEMA, but that process between getting an award and then moving into construction tends to be a little on the slow side. That by the time that the 2012 storm hit, it was obsolete. So FEMA has paid for a flood wall. It's $12 million. I don't have the exact height in my head right now, but it's at least 1.5 feet above the 500-year flood elevation. For this very reason, Charlie, because moving the treatment plant is not an easy thing to do. Right, you've got all the sewers going there, and you're trying to be more energy efficient. Right, we love gravity from the standpoint that it doesn't create carbon footprint. But these treatment plants tend to be in harm's way. They're down near the river, so there is a very large flood wall that surrounds 3 sides of the treatment plant in order to prevent this type of a rise from inundating the plant. And there's a pumping system on the back, on the dry side, on the treatment plant side of the plant, just in case there is a breach and overtopping of that particular flood wall.
I was thinking about that flood wall in relationship. I didn't know, Charlie, if I'm interrupting. I apologize if you had further on your question. But I was thinking the same thing. I remember when we were discussing that flood wall in Binghamton, and I wondered the status. And I thought that there was, at the time, a resiliency. I don't want to say it was like a standard for resiliency that we were going to build, that wall was going to be built about 5 feet over the 100-year flood. I just wondered if there was a little history on that and from a resiliency standpoint. And then I was going to kind of ask the same thing about the village of Boonville and their creek rehabilitation and erosion. Did it take into account, was that erosion because of a lot of flooding? And is that riprap repair going to have a resiliency component to it? Thank you.
Sure. So the Binghamton flood wall is going to be built above the 500-year flood elevation. Okay, which of course, with the storms that we've been seeing, especially this last summer, the two storms that hit Manhattan, with Central Park, the 1 hour flood elevation rainfall events of 1.8 inches in 1 hour, followed 10 days later by a 3.1 inch rain event. I think the rainfall intensity maps are something that we're all going to need to take a closer look at to ensure that what are we designing towards, and are we designing for past information, or are we going to have to start designing towards future information? But to answer the first question, it was the 500 years, and it's above, I believe it's 1.5 feet above the flood, at 500-year flood elevation. And again, I'm happy to get that information to the board.
Thank you, Tim. I knew I remembered a 5, but it was 500 years, not 5 feet.
That's okay. Yeah. And then the other question regarding the interceptor, the interceptor is in a location, and just like sewers and interceptors, those are harder to make resilient from a flood standpoint. So the best you can do is protect them in place versus relocating them. So that's the reason for the extra riprap along that shoreline, to prevent the scouring. I don't know how long it's taken of high flood events and erosion to have exposed that pipe. I don't believe it was just one storm, but I'm not certain if that's discussed in that engineering report. I'm happy to get any information that you guys might deem appropriate on that. We'll have staff look at that to see if there's any history on that.
Thanks. Tim, I have one question on the Addison project, the first one.
Sure.
I was there in August during that, I think it was Hurricane Fred, when it came through, impacted the village. I think the Tuscarora Creek overflowed. Did that storm at all impact the planning or potential implementation of the project here? And I guess if it didn't, can it be said that the project will help the resiliency of the village for future flood events?
So the good news for Addison is they're out of the wastewater treatment plant business, right? They're converting their plant. They're going to decommission their existing treatment plant, and they're going to put in a pump station and a force main, and send their wastewater to the town of Irwin for treatment. So much like what's going to be happening down in Long Beach, where Long Beach is going to be decommissioning and sending their wastewater to Bay Park for those same reasons. If there's where there are treatment plants whether it's either flooding has been a concern, that you might need to make resiliency as part of your scope to protect it from a future storm. In this instance, as long as we are using we have flood elevation standards that we put into the engineering report that is currently out there now that has adopted the CARA standards that came out in August of last year. But this project was done this project began in 2019 and 2021 would have been just before those standards got published. Before that, we were using standards that we jointly agreed with the New England states under NEI to have critical infrastructure protected at least 3 feet above the 100-year floodplain, and non-critical to a lower standard. The idea being treatment plant tanks can be flooded, and then when the storm abates, the treatment plant can get back in operation, but you got to keep your motors, your electrical equipment high and dry.
Okay, Tim, thanks. That's good news. Any other questions on this slate of projects? Great. All in favor of adopting resolution ID number 7?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. ID 7 is approved, and that does it for the resolutions. Now on to item number 9, new business. We have a presentation on water meters by David from DOH. David, are you there?
Yep, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing with the presentation.
Dave, Bernadette's going to give you, she's going to give you the controls to show your presentation. So once you get it, then you can just
So I can just
show
share
it.
my screen.
Yeah, yeah. You see your PowerPoint?
You guys seeing it now?
You see the presenter view. There it is. Perfect.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. All right. So to talk about meters, let's start talking about funding availability. So meters can be included in any DWSRF or WIA funded project. Many projects do include meters, and we will add meters as a component to any project that we fund. Meter projects standalone would typically not score well within our scoring system, but they would still likely be offered as a worst case market rate financing. So the point here is that meters are definitely fundable. As far as costs, before I get into the details here, I want to be clear that these numbers here are really a combination of a lot of information from actual bid prices, some very recent estimates, and from some bigger systems and from some smaller systems. So there really is a range. I just wanted to put numbers in to really give people an idea. So the typical cost to replace existing meters is around $1,000 to $2,000. And again, this depends on a lot of things, a lot of appurtenances that may or may not be included. The typical cost to install a meter on an existing unmetered system would be around double that, so $2,000 to $4,000 per service connection. And this work would typically include the meter, the reading software in the system, and computers are often needed, the labor to install, and also engineering services. But I really want to point out that it really depends on the size of the system, how many you're buying, how many are residential versus how many are commercial, which are going to be larger meters and would be more expensive. And the typical useful life for meters is generally accepted to be 15 to 20 years. However, things I'm seeing lately are kind of indicating that they may be useful for up to 20 years, but they tend to be efficient for less than that. So generally, 15 years would be the maximum where you're going to get that true efficiency out of the meters. So as far as the authority to require meters, a DOH does not have the regulatory authority to require meters or to mandate how water systems bill their customers. So even if a system was required to add meters, there's no mandate for them to use those meters to bill the customers. And also there's no federal requirement for SRF funded projects to include meters. Continuing with the authority, so meter requirements are under the jurisdiction of the DEC under their water withdrawal permit program. I hope with the commissioner on today, I've cited that properly. To determine, they're used to determine compliance with their permits. So they need to make sure that sources are not being, they're not taking more water than they're permitted for. Also, all new public water systems that came online after April 2013 are required to have individual service meters. And the DEC, at their discretion, can also require meters on public water systems that came online prior to April 2013 if they determine it's necessary to protect the environment, public health and safety, and to ensure proper management of the waters of New York State. So as far as public health with meters, as we all know, the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and the WIA program, they're public health priority programs. So we prioritize projects based on how they address serious public health issues. Meters, while as I said, we do fund them, we do always include them when a system wants to, but they're not considered a public health priority. And requiring meters for funded projects could actually have some unintended negative public health consequences. This may be the case where a system was required to put in meters and say they were going to spend $1 million to do that. That may be $1 million that they then have to scale back on actually replacing infrastructure, so there'd be less aged leaking water mains replaced because they couldn't afford to add money to the project. That could actually result in less water conservation. Also, a requirement could discourage systems from seeking program funds at all. A smaller project that may not even include distribution work, maybe they're just replacing a tank or upgrading a tank, that project will require to add or upgrade all of their service meters. It may make the cost just too much for them to handle and scare them away from the program entirely.
Dave, have you done any analysis on that? Just to stop there for a second, have you done any analysis as to the likelihood of that, or whether or not there'd be particular communities affected?
I haven't done anything formally, no, but I do in the back of my mind when I see a project that comes across, as the example I use would be a project that's solely replacing a storage tank or upgrading a tank. And it may be $1 million project, say. So if we were going to require them to double the size of that project to add meters, that's really not part of the scope of the project that addresses public health. That's where I could really see that being.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is, and again, I don't mean to interrupt the discussion, but just forgive me because I'm sort of new to how these dynamics work. I mean, you talked about the stick side of the equation, but here we're talking about, almost the carrot side at some level. I mean, couldn't you, if it were advisable to go down the route of trying to promote this type of thing, and whether it be meters or something else, isn't there, cost benefit analysis tests or something that could be in or out to address the issue you're talking about? That's what I'm just making sure I understand. I mean, if those are real concerns, aren't they, or couldn't they be addressed through, on a project by project basis, where the default might be to do something, but someone could get exempted if indeed it was going to, cause the kind of consequences you're concerned about here?
I mean, that's something we could look at, but
I'm really just asking a theoretical question. Isn't that
yeah.
the kind of thing that could
Yeah,
be done?
yeah.
If right. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll sort of jump in if I could, just sort of non-theoretical. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I remembered that when New York City implemented water meters and charging people for water, there was, I see your next slide, there was this dramatic reduction in water use. Okay. I don't think, again, we could, so I think that happened. And then the socioeconomic part of it, you're talking sort of globally, like a community says, we can't afford that project, let's not do it. I would be interested to know of a particular community that maybe thinks like that or is thinking like that. But I'm thinking on the other side, and that is these individual people who are, I believe, lower income people, maybe have smaller, units, smaller houses, use less water. Again, generally, and would pay less if they were actually being charged for the water. The only way to charge them for the amount of usage is to have individual meters. But so that's sort of again, I understand at your level your arguments, but I guess there's a different level that I'm looking at. So that I think that was sort of to ask this question. That's why I'm interested in any analysis you've done, on these statements. Just very interested in knowing, some particulars.
Okay. I haven't really done a whole lot of analysis on it, if that's what you're asking. Okay. We'll move on to the last slide. So just some alternatives. So public water systems are required to meter the amount of water that they produce. The DOH requires this through monthly operation reports. So water systems need to record the amount of water they produce daily and submit those reports monthly to local health departments. The DEC does this through the water withdrawal program, as I mentioned earlier. Any unusual increases in production will generally be seen by the operators. The operators typically know their systems very well. They start seeing increases in what's the norm that would alert them to potential problems in the system that they could then address. And then finally, some other measures that are used that can effectively achieve water conservation, replacing aged water mains, again, spending the money on the actual infrastructure to reduce leakage. Systems can, as part of their regular O&M program, implement leak detection programs, do this regularly to determine if and where they have leaks. They could use low flow fixtures. Also require actual working rain sensors and automatic sprinkler systems. I don't know how many times I've seen in my own neighborhood people with their automatic systems watering their lawns during a rainstorm, which is that's one of the big things I think can be addressed. And also some communities just always have regular stringent water conservation measures in place, not just when it's a drought, not just when there's issues, but they have these in place all the time. They designate days and hours for outdoor water use, such as lawn watering. So for example, like they have odd even days based on the house number and certain hours of the day that you are limited to watering so that people aren't watering during the afternoon hours in the summertime. So that's the presentation. If anyone has any questions.
David, thank you. Any questions for David?
It's not really a question. This is just makes me think that, water really is an externality to a lot of people. And I don't want to raise a philosophical thing here, but by having water meters, it becomes a real tangible part of life for people and understanding how much they use. But those are all good things that we do as a state for conservation, but it still just makes water a little bit of an externality in the use of it and the cost of it and the value of it. When there's meters, it's kind of direct, but just adding that thought.
I guess I'm just interested if you have any data, any sense of either the number of or the percent of or any breakdown on the even residential just across the state of how many either individuals or systems are not metered. Just wondering, is it 2%, 1%, 5%? Even a guess would be just helpful so that we know, just the lay of the land. I'm just very curious. Again, the New York City was quite an undertaking when they went to meters and charging for water, and I think it's gone very well. But I'm just interested in if you have any sense even or who holds that data. Maybe it's counties rather than you guys, but interested in anything you know about that.
I think that may be a question better posed to DEC, who, you know, again, is the authority requiring meters in most cases. I don't know. I know we don't track that. I really don't know what the answer to that question is. And I'm not sure if our local health departments would have that information either.
Yeah, that's a great question, Charlie. And fortunately, as Dave says, I mean, it's something that at least whether it be on the state health department side or even the local health department side, it's not something that's tracked. But I would maybe just sort of offer up, maybe just anecdotally, you know, since we do have that checkbox on the information sheets, and I would say sort of anecdotally, I would say the greater majority of projects that we see tend to be metered. And again, just anecdotally, I would also say most of your, or just a majority of all your larger systems, I would venture a guess, are metered. It's going to probably be some of the very, very smaller systems that may or may not have meters, and primarily probably from the cost perspective side of things that Dave had initially said. But again, that's just sort of an anecdotal bit of information just based upon things that, you know, I think we've been sort of seeing here in the board presentations.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, David, thank you again for presentation on this really important topic. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to number 10, adjournment. Again, congratulations, Maureen, and welcome home to the corporation. I think we're all very happy to have you at the helm, and now permanently at the helm. So congratulations again. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Chairman, I'll make a motion for adjournment and second the welcome.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Want to keep doing this? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you, everybody. Thomas, thank you for all your hard work.
Thank
And again,
you.
congratulations. See you all soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.